Hi, my name is Callie Chappelle, and thanks for watching this video, Introduction to Cross-Examination. This is a part of a larger series of videos, part of the Go Fight Win Novice Debate series that I'm doing to teach novice debaters how to do policy debate. This is the first video in the cross-examination series, which is the part 1 out of 3, just about the basics of cross-ex. Alright, so I'm Callie Chappelle again. I'm a debater for the University of Michigan, and I debated at Traverse City Central High School in high school. I am a second negative, first affirmative speaker, and a fun fact about me is that I once made a kid cry in cross-ex. Probably not something I should be proud of, but I'm a little bit proud of it. Alright, so to make the most out of these videos, you should do 2 things. First, take notes, and second, rewatch bits you need re-explained. Hopefully we'll have a worksheet or supplemental materials that goes along with this video. For example, this video has another video that I recommend you watch, so check in the video description or just in the text of this video to find that. Second, you don't need to memorize everything. Just be familiar with everything in the video, so when I talk about things that were referred to in this video and later videos, you'll know what I'm talking about. And finally, a disclaimer, your coach may like things differently. This is not the end-all be-all of debate. There are many different styles, so if you have a different personal preference, that's totally valid. It's not my way or the highway. Alright, so what is cross-examination? So cross-examination, or cross-ex, or CX, is a time when someone from the other team asks you questions, you're getting cross-exed, or you ask questions to someone from the other team, so you cross-ex someone else. What is cross-ex? They are 3 minutes long after every constructive speech. So how long are constructives again? Pop quiz? If you said 8 minutes, you're right. Alright, so let's see. Here we go. So this is who cross-exes who. So after the 1AC, the 2N cross-exes the 1A. After the 1NC, the 1A cross-exes the 1N. After the 2AC, the 1N cross-exes the 2A. And after the 2NC, the 2A cross-exes the 2N. So do you see a pattern? Yeah, the debater from the other team, so if I'm AF, then the neg team will cross-ex. The person from the other team who is not giving the next speech asks the cross-ex questions. So that's a little bit confusing, but all it means is that the 2N cross-exes the 1AC because the next speech is the 1NC, so obviously you're not going to have the 1N cross-ex because they're about to give their speech. The 1A cross-exes the 1NC because the 2AC is next. The 1N cross-exes the 2AC because the 2NC is next. Okay, that's all that means. And so why do you think that is? It's because the debater who's going to speak next can use their partner's cross-ex time to prepare for their speech. So essentially it's 3 minutes of free prep time. This is a picture of a squirrel. It has nothing to do with the slide content. I just thought it was a cool picture. Alright. Come on. That can't be the only reason. You're right. There are about 20 million reasons why cross-ex is super awesome. But here are 3 big ones. First is you can use cross-ex to clarify things that happened in the speech that you didn't understand 100%. Next, number 2, you can ask questions in such a way that makes the judge think that you're the best debater in the round, increasing your speaker points. And third is you can give your partner 3 extra minutes to prep for their speech. So you allow your partner to have an even better speech if you use up your cross-ex time. So pop quiz. Who cross-exes the following speeches? So pause the video, see if you can answer these questions, and then I'll go through it with you, okay? So pause. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've already done the activity and you've unpaused me. Okay, so let's see. The 2N cross-exes the 1AC. The 2A cross-exes the 2NC. The 1N cross-exes the 2AC. The 1A cross-exes the 1NC. And then the 1NR is a trick question because there's only cross-exes after the constructive speeches and the 1NR is a rebuttal. I always used to try to cross-ex the 1NR, and then I looked kind of dumb because there's no cross-ex after the 1NR. So keep that in mind. Dagnabit, I messed that up big time. Don't worry about it. Even top varsity debaters sometimes forget who cross-exes whom. And trust me, I have stood up to give the wrong speech or cross-ex when I shouldn't have a lot of times. So we're in the same boat. And plus, you can make a cheat sheet with the speech order and times, as well as when cross-ex is, so we've got your back. Just go back to the format of debate video or scroll back to a couple slides earlier in this video and you can just write down when the speeches are and when you have cross-ex, and then you can just peek at it right before the speech, and you'll know exactly what to do, alright? You don't have to memorize it. You just have to know where your resources are. So, what does a cross-ex look like? So here's an example of a really good cross-ex. This is from the Michigan State Demo Debate this year from the SDI, or the Spartan Debate Institute. So you can follow this link, or you can just Google Michigan State Demo Debate 2014. And then if you go to 1210, then that is the cross-ex of the 1AC. So a big disclaimer, everyone who's debating here has been a super amazing college debater who's been in the activity for many years, as many as 8 years. The 2A in this debate won the TOC. I don't know about the other debaters. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them had won the TOC in high school as well. And you're not expected to be this good at cross-ex yet. But there are some big things that you should notice. First is they really command the space. They are powerful, they are very assertive, and they sound like they know what they're talking about, because they actually do know what they're talking about. And you should try to emulate kind of this stance and their stature in cross-ex. Next, they face the judge when they're doing their cross-ex, not facing who they're cross-exing. So you should definitely face the judge and look at the judge and make eye contact with the judge instead of the person that you are asking questions of, or the person that is asking questions of you. And finally, they look at and refer to their evidence frequently, which is a really great cross-ex strategy. Alright, so how should I conduct myself in cross-ex? So you should be assertive, but you should not be aggressive. Be confident, but not condescending. Ask your question and let your opponent answer it before going on to the next question. So don't just cut them off as soon as they say one word and be like, okay, next question, because that makes you look really bad. Also, though, on the other side, if your opponent is going on and on and on and not letting you ask more questions, you can say thank you and then move on to the next question. So, like, let's say I was cross-exing my alternative self with this little lower voice. So I'd be like, so, how does your plan solve? And then me, my other self, is just like blah, 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 like blah, 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 like going on and on. I can say, thank you. I'd like to ask another question, and then ask my next question. Okay? So that's how you handle that. Always be nice. Always be nice. That's all that needs to be said there. And finally, the best cross-exers are the ones that prepare. Those who understand their evidence and their opponent's evidence are always best prepared to respond to questions intelligently and quickly. So, cross-ex questions. Whoa. I can tell you're probably freaking out a little bit, especially if you pause the video like I told you to do and watch the SDI Demo Debate. You probably watched that video and I'm like, help, how am I supposed to look awesome and ask awesome questions like that? It's okay, take a deep breath. It's actually a lot easier than it seems. I've made an easy checklist of what you need to know by the end of every cross-ex. So, here's where we're going. First, we're going to talk about what you should get out of cross-ex. So, those are the AF and neg basics. Second, we're going to talk, and this is in part 2, we're going to talk about questions you should be asking cross-ex speech by speech. And then part 3 are advanced cross-ex techniques. So, this is what you should be thinking right before you get up to your cross-ex. First, you should ask yourself, do I know all of the basic information? If the answer is no, then you should ask the questions on the basics, which we'll discuss next. If you do know all the basic information, which we'll discuss, then you can graduate to more advanced questions using the more advanced techniques in the end of this video, or really in part 3 of the video series. So remember, after hearing about all these cool tactics, you might be tempted to ask really challenging questions that pop into your head. These are great questions. You should definitely ask them. But if you don't know the basics by the end of cross-ex, you simply cannot win the round. So you might be like, oh, I have the Slayer question. But then you're like, but I don't remember if they read a disad or not. Make sure you ask the basics before you go on to more advanced things. So, AF basics. By the end of every cross-ex, you should know the following information, okay? First is, what off-case positions did they read or extend? So, did they read a disad? If so, what was the disad? Did they read a counterplan? If so, what was the counterplan? What are all the parts of the off-case? So, if they're reading a topicality, you need to know what the violation is and what the standards are. If they're reading a disad, you have to know what the uniqueness, link, and impact are. If they read a counterplan, you have to understand, or at least have a basic understanding of how the counterplan solves the AF. Also, what is a net benefit? Also, what type of counterplan is it? Is it an advantage counterplan, a process counterplan, a plan-inclusive counterplan, or a PIC, etc.? And finally, is the counterplan conditional, dispositional, or unconditional? If they're reading a K, you should know what the link, impact, and alt is, and then you should find out if it's going to be a floating PIC. These are terms that you probably are not familiar with right now, but as you learn about topicality, disads, counterplans, and critiques, it'll make more sense. So you should come back to this video and at least have this written down, so when you review your notes, then you are like, oh, that's what she meant. Next, you should make sure that you know if they made any theory arguments. And then finally, you should know what the arguments are on case. Okay? So if you're neg, by the end of every cross-ex, you should know this information. First, what are the AF advantages? How do they, the AF, solve the advantages? Next, what disads link to the AF? What counterplans solve the AF? So don't ask this explicitly, but try to make them explain how they link or how a counterplan might solve. And examples are coming. Third is, did the AF make any theory arguments? And finally, what arguments did the AF make against our off-case positions? So if you missed an argument while flowing, so like let's say you missed the third argument on the disadvantage, you should make sure that you ask the 2A what that argument was and make sure that you answer it. Because remember, silence is concession. You absolutely cannot be silent or drop an argument because that means that it's true for the other team. So, in summation, if you get one thing out of this video, you should know that you should be the stupid person. Make sure you understand 100% of what's going on in the debate before you try fancy ways to look smart, okay? Make sure that you know what's going on. Make sure you have a good grip of everything in the debate before you just try to make yourself look smart. So, coming after the break, 2 more parts of these videos. Part 2 is about how to conquer cross-ex. So these are pro tips for novice cross-exes. And then cross-ex tips speech by speech. Part 3 of this video series are advanced cross-ex techniques. So they're the techniques themselves, and then I have a section called the 6 people you don't want to meet in cross-ex. So this is a BuzzFeed style description of 6 different type of cross-ex personalities that are really terrible to debate. So, in other words, I'm describing what not to do in cross-ex. So I hope you join me for these 2 more videos. They're going to be a lot of fun, and I'll see you then. Thanks, bye!